we put together a panel which I'm delighted that Mr. Tim Sullivan has agreed to facilitate. Tim and I go back a ways and both had an affiliation with Carroll College. Tim has served as president and CEO of the Rev Group since August 2014. He, from my vantage point, equally important, he served as chairman of the Governor's Commission on Workforce Investment, wrote a report on the technical college and workforce issues in 2012-13. Tim, is that right? 2012-13? 2012. He's twice chair of the Metropolitan Milwaukee Association of Commerce, and he's brought now, I think, 4 companies to the state of Wisconsin. He cares deeply about these issues and is one of the smarter people I know. So I'll turn the program over to Tim.
Wow. Smart guy, huh? Okay. It's at Carroll Education, exactly. By the way, Jim was my freshman history professor, so that's how far back we go. I'd like to start with just a couple of comments, then we'll have, obviously, the panel to chime in. Jim asked me to join Competitive Wisconsin a couple years ago, and he said, you know, what is the burning platform that really needs to be addressed? And I said, when we put the report together back in 2012, I said the state of Wisconsin was using a whopping $410,000 worth of money to train our workforce. That was it for the entire state. Of that, 90% came from the feds, which meant that 377,000 of the 410,000 was provided by the federal government. I currently manufacture a whole cadre of specialty vehicles, primarily ambulances and fire trucks. We operate 23 plants in 11 states. We have a great deal of experience with workforce development, as you can well imagine. And the common denominator there is what's already been talked about. There's money flying around all over the place, and a lot of it's state money. So when I said to Jim and Competitive Wisconsin, I said, show us the money. We need money to really pull this thing together and incentivize people to get workers to the state of Wisconsin. Just a quick factoid also, and kind of, you know, jumping on the back of what you were talking about, Illinois is the second most shrinking state in the country right now. The first, and it's been consistent, is West Virginia. The coal industry has completely collapsed. But Illinois is collapsing. People can't get out of Dodge fast enough. And it's really not as much job-related as it's quality of life, cost of living, taxes, crime, all the really bad things. And the good news is we're right here, and we've got a target that we can attack. Let me shift and talk about a couple of things, and we've got this panel to predominantly talk about the private sector. And I'd like to talk a little bit about healthcare. Obviously, we manufacture some vehicles. We manufacture 65% of the ambulances in this country, but we also manufacture ambulances in South America, China, Canada. It's very interesting that the people are addressing the whole rural situation different around the world. Everyone remembers the flying doctors in Australia. We are making actually operating rooms on wheels right now for China to serve the rural areas. We are actually making right now CT scanning machines to go on the back of our vehicles to take the remote areas of Canada. MRI machines, mobile, and those are the next things to go to China. It's because there is not the infrastructure rurally. That's the extreme. Being a city guy, it's easier. I can't really imagine what it's like to try to keep the healthcare industry going in the state. So, Tim, maybe some comments on that.
Yeah, a couple things that I hope to come away that this event helps with is that more people around our state understand the house is on fire. I think in rural Wisconsin, we've been experiencing it, so probably that's not as much where the sales pitch is needed. But the workforce issues we're having in healthcare, as I mentioned, I guess, in the video, are doubly complicated or impactful because we have people aging out of healthcare, but at the same time, they're aging into being patients and needing the services we have. So, which may be a little different in welding. I'm not sure older people need more things welded, but For healthcare, we're losing people working in healthcare. At the same time, the demand and need for our services is going up. So I think we have a crisis now, and that's before we start looking at the forecasted numbers I mentioned. You just can't produce a doctor or nurse overnight. It's a lead time for academic institutions to expand. They have been expanding, but we need more expansion. And then, of course, it's the long training time in school, and then particularly for physicians in graduate medical education afterwards. So we're already late and need to be working on this. I like sustainable solutions. I like the worker pipeline issue because we know if we can get young people to come to Wisconsin, get to finish their training here, they're much more likely to stay here.
Dan, when you look at getting people to work rurally, what has your organization talked about? What are some of the ideas that you've thrown around to make a difference right now with the shortages that you have?
One of the opportunities that we have is working with 12 different sectors across Wisconsin and Minnesota. When I tell people that, they always say, well, there must be a tremendous challenge because they're all different. But actually, since so many of our cooperative sectors are based in the rural communities, and most have a very strong reliance on a successful agriculture, that they have much more in common than they realize. So when we go out across the rural communities that we work in both states, the access to labor, succession plans for the board of directors and the management, being able to finance the type of new technologies and precision agriculture that are available now during a 5-year downturn in the agricultural economy. Those are the challenges that impact you if you're a credit union, or you're a farm credit association, or your electrical cooperative, or your healthcare cooperative, or housing, or our agricultural cooperatives, because these are all the areas that we work in. And what we're really seeing is a total reset in our rural communities and in agriculture. And it's best demonstrated by one fact, that 40 years ago, in 1978, 41 years ago, Wisconsin had 47,700 family dairy farms. Today we have 7,000. That's 40,000 less family dairy farms in 40 years. But we milk the same number of cows, and we actually produce 10 billion pounds more milk per year than we did in 1978. So that consolidation did not impact production. We have more milk than we've ever had. We set the record at 30 billion pounds. But we did it with 40,000 less dairy farms. And when you work in our rural communities, you see the draining effect that that has had. Because those families, those 40,000 dairy farm families that we lost, they filled the schools. They shopped on Main Street. They served on the co-op board and the town board and the local insurance board. So when we go out and meet with our co-op managers now, and I go into a room, everyone in the room looks like me. They're all in their 60s. There's not a lot of hair in the room, and if there is, it's gray. So they're wondering, where do we get the future leaders? Where do we keep this co-op going in the future? And how do we bring the types of people in who can actually bring the technical knowledge and the skill into into our communities? I recently heard a new term that I had not heard ever before, but perhaps some of you have. But I was talking to a school superintendent, and she was talking about of a rural small community school district. And she said, what I deal with every day is rural apathy. The people that I work with here feel that all the best and brightest have left, and they're the ones that have left behind. Those are difficult conversations to have and difficult solutions to come up with.
This is about discussing collaboration also with the public sector. What have you done to engage the public sector, and what would you like to see more from the public sector in the work that you're doing? Tim?
Not to directly answer, but more general, I totally agree with the issue of greater collaboration. Dennis Winters is here, and you'll be hearing from him in a little bit. He's taught me and each year I get a refresh on the numbers, that rural Wisconsin has not yet recovered as strongly from the Great Recession. I think we're just now back to where we were when we entered into it. So I think both public sector, private sector, that's an important data point that we need to be aware of. So while, yes, we have trouble recruiting, we also have been losing jobs and losing people, losing populations. So the hospitals and clinics that govern the cooperative, they can have the best health care in the world, but if their community's shrinking, that's not good for them as a business. So we have had good assistance from the public sector in expanding educational opportunities in medicine and nursing, and we need to continue to do that. In the private sector, I think particularly in rural healthcare, and the co-op is getting increasingly more active, we need to get a lot better at cooperating with the other sectors so that they're healthy. So a big priority for me personally, and I think the co-op, is, you know, how do we help regrow the rural economy? And that's a public and private partnership.
And what about you with engagement with the public sector?
I agree completely with what Tim said. You know, the strength of cooperative network is really in the word network. So we represent those 12 sectors in the halls of government and in the public square in both states. There's a reason why our office in Madison and our office in St. Paul is within walking distance of the state capitol, because that's where we spend all our time. And being the voice of the rural communities in state government, being able to represent not just one sector, but 12 different cooperative sectors in support of the cooperative business model, and communicating to our elected officials and to the general public what are the issues that our rural communities are facing. How do we come together, whether it's under the cooperative model or a private ownership model, to address those membership, address those challenges. So our membership really relies on us to be the voice, both not only in state government, but in the public square as well.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I think we'll move on to the next section.